So today I'd like to talk about responsive e-commerce, or how I learned to stop worrying and design a responsive storefront for Magento. So I am a senior UX designer. I've been designing for about 15 years now. I joined Magento earlier this year. Previously I was with companies like Google and Dell. So after immediately joining Magento, my first assignment was to design a responsive theme for Magento. And so today I'd like to retrace my steps on this project and share the lessons that I learned along the way. And I drew up this basic design strategy, which involved starting with design fundamentals for responsive design, investigating patterns, design and iterate, and finally testing with users. So starting with responsive design, I know it sounds like a buzzword, but there's actually more to it than that. Responsive design is actually about delivering the promise of the web, which is wherever I am, whatever device I'm using, the content and experience is going to adapt to me wherever I am. And so from one single code base, I can deliver to all these platforms. Now, yes, more buzzwords. Fundamentally, this means we have to change how we think about our designs, and we need to go about designing in different ways. Now, this isn't new. This is actually a culmination of about the last decade of trends. So things like fluid layouts, semantic HTML, graceful degradation, all of these terms actually taught us techniques that today are the foundation of responsive design. And so it really is just a continuation. Here you can see responsive design in action. This is npr.org. You can see mobile, tablet, desktop. It's the exact same content, just 3 different devices simultaneously looking at the same content. Now, this is the point in the conversation where I'm supposed to show you a chart and convince you that you're supposed to care about mobile. But I think you already have this idea. You see it for yourself. You know, everyone's on mobile. You know that's where your customers are going, and that's where you need to go. So regardless of whatever trend, they all look the same to me, so I created my own. So mobile stuff is going crazy. So I know there's other options. So this is not the first way we've been able to deliver content to mobile devices. So mobile optimized site, native application, and most recently responsively designed. But mobile optimized and native applications come with some cons. I'm not here to make a case for any of these techniques. Ultimately, your customers are moving to mobile. You have to move there. I'm assuming at some point you're going to have to design a responsive site, and so I'm just going to roll past any of these cases. So the fundamentals of responsive design. It's important to know that responsive design is not one single technology. It's a series of techniques. Fundamentally, the site has to be aware of the design or the display environment that it's in, and it does that using something called media queries. It's the CSS3 technology. Now, once it's aware of its environment, it actually adapts or responds to that environment. And some of the fundamentals that cause that are fluid grids, breakpoints, and image scaling. And I'm just going to blow through these really quickly for the basics. Now, this is from builtwith.com, and it shows you some of the common media queries that are happening today. There's no one hard and fast rule to determine what type of device you're looking at. So different designers will use different combinations of these. You'll see maximum width, minimum width, device pixel ratio. It's a combination of these that they use to determine the environment. Now, here you can see this is an example media query. It's looking at minimum device width, maximum device width, the orientation, and the pixel ratio. Now, all of these things actually happen to be an iPad with Retina display. If all of these evaluate to true, the styles that follow get executed. Now, you put a series of these rules together for these different sizes, and voila, you have a responsive site that goes from very small screens to very large ones. Now, the transition points, in this case, C767, is the point at which the layout will go from a mobile layout to a tablet layout, and those points are called breakpoints. Oh, now the fluid grid did not show up. Okay, well, it's a 12-column grid. What's important to know here is that the columns are specified in percentages. It's relatively sized, not with specific absolute sizes. So as the container shrinks and grows, the column shrinks and grows, the grid remains intact. And that's fundamental to letting the design grow and shrink. Now, image scaling, this is the least evolved part of responsive design. What's important to note is that you have to make a compromise here. You either trade off on image quality or bandwidth. There's really no good way to solve it right now. However, look for some real improvements in this in the coming years. W3C is tackling this. So check, responsive design fundamentals. Let's dive into responsive patterns. Now, as I started to look at responsive sites, it became clear to me that to find these patterns, I had to find responsive sites first. And so there are some good resources. This is Media Queries. It's a curated gallery of responsive sites. You can waste hours here. There's really beautiful stuff. This is an example of a Scandinavian art museum. I can't say the name, but I think it's beautiful. And there's endless examples like this. The problem is that I'm looking for e-commerce examples. I'm trying to design stores. And there's really not a lot that are showcased right now. So I had to roll up my sleeves and start finding these sites myself. And I just got into the habit of evaluating every site I was visiting. The first technique you can do is just grab and pull the corner, shrink the site, and see if it responds fluidly. If it's not fluid, it's probably not responsive. You can also install extensions like this, like Web Developer, pop it right to a size of your choice, like an iPhone 5. But it's not enough, because remember, it's not just size that it's being evaluated to determine the mobile layout. So you can install what are called mobile emulators. This is my favorite. It's a mobile RWD tester. You can see this is LiveScribe. It's a Magento site. Open up the tray, select iPhone 5. I get LiveScribe as it would appear on an iPhone 5. Simple, easy. However, I couldn't always make every site look on my desktop exactly as it looked on my mobile device. Google Chrome has great emulation features. You can open it up, tweak any of the variables, including accelerometers and other things. It's pretty cool. So on and on, evaluating all these sites, I ended up with over 90 that I cataloged and evaluated. So 2 mom and pop shops here, a little audience participation. This is Amazon.com. This is Walmart Canada. So looking at both of them, which one's responsive? Can you guys guess? Who thinks it's Amazon? Show of hands. Who thinks it's Walmart Canada? What gave it away? So you can see here, when shrunk down, Walmart Canada, very nice. Amazon, you can just see where the desktop experience gets cut off. So what gave it away? It's true. Yeah. I know. Amazon.com has a mobile optimized site. That's not the point, or actually it kind of is the point, which is that the more I looked at these patterns, the more it became clear that mobile patterns would scale up through tablet and desktop much better than vice versa. So a lot of desktop patterns aren't necessarily working as well for tablets and mobile devices. So this kind of mobile-first design technology is actually making our desktop designs better. So I had to append my strategy. I added and mobile patterns to it. So I'm just going to blast through these really quick. So mobile device fundamentals hold true. And so things like typographic design, making sure they're touch compatible, good visual hierarchy, lower information density, these things are all very important to good design. So Apple and Android provide 2 great guidelines and references. So when building a responsive site, I really recommend you go back and review these mobile app guidelines. They're filled with things like this. This is typography from Apple, talking about visual hierarchy with fonts. This is actually touch compatibility from Android, where you can see these kind of recommendations in terms of the size of the icon, making sure they're tappable, they work with fingers, there's adequate spacing so that I don't accidentally click the wrong thing. Really high contrast, very simple visual styles. Look at this applied. This is Motorola.com, and look at the desktop screen on the right. Don't you just want to tap it? Like, how many of you accidentally tapped your laptop screen when looking at a device like this? I caught myself doing it several times now. And so, but as we look at mobile design, it's about more than size. So these mobile-first principles, beyond being just good buzzwords, are actually about better design. So thinking about the user, the use cases, information hierarchy, and actually mobile use cases are also no longer an excuse. So you can't just drop use cases now because they're on a small device. Users are going to use whatever's convenient to them, and then it's not going to matter to them what device they're using. They expect to get the same content. This is World Wildlife Fund, and they know what's important to their site. It's very clear here, so they know what's important to their users. When you get to the mobile experience, you can actually see donate and adopt front and center top here. There's no question what's most important in this experience. And this carries forward into other sites. Starbucks. I get my big giants confused. So Starbucks sign-in's right at the top. MailChimp, sign up for free. Believe it or not, the Affordable Health Care Act has a responsive site. You see there on the right, they actually missed an opportunity though. The home page lacks a clear call to action. You open the menu and you can see apply now there. So I guess they got, that's one thing they didn't quite get right. Samsung, beautiful site, rich, immersive content, and it doesn't matter if you're on desktop, mobile, tablet. Every piece of content goes back and forth seamlessly, and it's really a beautiful experience. This is an intelligent thermostat company called Nest. You guys may have heard of them out of the Bay Area. This is a video where they're adjusting the thermostat and using it, and again, it doesn't matter what device I'm on. The content goes there. The experience is the same. Can-Am, a Canadian motorcycle company, it's actually a pretty good site. It has a great bike finder, a lot of great content, but when you get down to the motorcycle configurator, it doesn't work on a small device. Santa Cruz Bicycles, I actually hate to say something bad about them because it's a beautiful site, but it's the same situation. Bike finder, no bike configurator. It is possible though. Mitsubishi.com. Their car configurator is completely accessible and visible via the mobile experience, and it's actually a lot of fun to use. So I highly recommend giving that a spin, no pun intended. It's a great experience. So then here, mobile patterns check, and moving on to responsive design patterns. So what's happening in responsive design? These patterns are actually pretty clear and consistent as you start to evaluate all these sites. So the masthead is collapsing down into a very compact, feature-rich experience. So you can see everything in this masthead on the right has moved into the masthead on the left. These examples like Samsung, Motorola, T-Mobile, see search, account, cart, and the menu control are all fundamentally always present. All of the complexity that was in the masthead is moving into the menu, so that ubiquitous burger icon is providing access to all of these controls. You expand it, it tends to push content to the right. These are all great examples of that menu in action. The search feature has become much more critical in this. So providing access to the search from the masthead is very common. If it's not in the masthead, it's in the first thing at the top of a menu when you open it, as in MailChimp.com. Now the footer has actually caught a lot of the content that used to be in the masthead, so it's all migrating to the bottom. So additional navigation, how to shop, and then how to contact the company. This is Bold and Noble. It's a beautiful site out of the UK with typographic maps. Now, because there's so much overlap between the menu and the footer, there's this urge to use the footer as your menu. So you'll see in some sites, you click on menu, it anchors down to the bottom of the page, and you get the menu. Now, I understand the urge to do this, but it's also very dangerous. It can be very disorienting, and you have to figure out where you are and get back to the real content. In this case, Smashing Magazine has a very small back to the top link mixed in their menu there. I bet you can't find it, especially when I change the page. Category pages are critical to a good e-commerce experience, and that's very true here. So you can see Kershaw Knives here on the left. Filtering is critical, and all the good principles in desktop, the need to do them right is magnified. So Kershaw Knives, it's important to provide access to all of these filters as well as context. You can see here, I can tell on the right which filters I have applied, and that actually holds true in my filter experience in the mobile experience. SkinnyTies.com. Brendan Falkowski is a good friend of Magento, and this is one of his Magento sites. It's beautifully done. It's hard to find a bad example anywhere on the site. It's very well executed, and it's a great example of filtering. Nokia looks a lot like their friend Microsoft. They use a lot of tiles, but it actually works well in a mobile experience. Currys, it's a UK retailer. They're not going to win any awards for beautiful design, but they've managed to pack every feature from their very dense desktop experience into their mobile experience, and that's an impressive feat in itself. Forms. Top justified labels are the trend. Some ideas die hard, so the left justified labels you see in the middle, you still have the urge to do those. Know that they're going to compromise your text areas and your fields. Data tables. These are a bit like Sasquatch, actually. They're getting harder and harder to find in responsive sites. Tables are just disappearing. I found this one with Capital One, and the way they solved the data problem, the data table problem, was they took the row on the left, the title row, and they actually made that the primary table in the mobile experience. You click through, you get the rest of the row as another data table. Salesforce.com, they used columns. The columns stack when you go to mobile. So check, responsive patterns and mobile patterns. So then my design process. So I decided to create maximum scalability by patternizing and creating as few patterns as possible, but my patterns needed context. So I picked these 6 core pages, 2 category pages, product details pages, 2 of those, and 2 checkout pages. I multiplied those by 3, 1 for each device, and ended up with 18 pages that we needed to design. We then took those pages, we designed them, and we brutally compared and contrasted those against each other, trying to align those to the highest degree possible. We then aligned these into use cases, into scenarios, and we tested those with users. An example of the compare and contrast, accordion arrows. This actually created a huge debate on the design team as to where do your arrows go and where do you point them. It actually turned into a strangely philosophical debate. But you can see on the left here, we have kind of an old school desktop pattern. It points to the right when it's expanded, it points down. Actually, it seems backwards now that I think about it. But on the mobile, it's actually pointing all different directions as well. We ultimately were able to align those with the arrows on the right. They point up when it's expanded, they point down when it's collapsed. And that pattern is consistent across all layouts. So design, iterate, design, iterate. With that complete, we tested these with users. So I'm going to cut that short today and not discuss it, but it was a very successful test, but we found problems that we needed to address. We then took these patterns, we removed them from all the different designs, and we created a UI kit or a sticker sheet. So we took all of these elements and created one compact PSD file, which acted like a style guide. And then that one concise sheet of design patterns became the thing we used for every successive design after that. We had kind of maximum amount of flexibility in those patterns. So I'm going to show you a quick sneak peek at the results. I have to say that I was forced to remove all branding and strip down the site to show it to you today. And what you're going to see is a screenshot from a developer's box. But just know that these responsive themes are coming to a future release of Magento. You can see here's a category page with all the different pricing options engaged and whatnot. But you can see left is mobile, right is desktop, exact same instance. And this is a product details page with the images removed. But same product details page on the right as the left. It operates seamlessly. So that's it.